David Stearns has identified his next reclamation project. The New York Mets have signed Frankie Montas to a 2-year deal.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so the New York Mets have made their first big signing to address their starting rotation, and on the surface, you might not like it. Frankie Montas signs a 2-year, $34 million deal with a player option, an opt-out after the first year. So a complete player-friendly deal coming off a season where he pitched to a near 5 ERA, 4.84 ERA, and just over 150 innings pitched. Why did the Mets do that? Well, let's start off with the average annual value, $17 million per. If you look at the market for starting pitchers, it's not as much of an overpay as you might seem. Yusei Kikuchi just got $21 million per over a 3-year deal with the Angels, coming off a season where, at the trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken, he had pitched to a 4.75 ERA, goes to the Astros. He was great in 10 starts, but there's still some risk in Yusei Kikuchi. Now, also, Frankie Montas last year hit the open market as a free agent, coming off of shoulder surgery. He had barely pitched with the Yankees in 2023. Goes out, tests the market, a potential, buy low guy, and he didn't really end up signing a buy low deal because he got $16 million guaranteed, but it was a 1-year deal with the Reds. And there was actually an option on that one too. And Montas ended up declining. I think it was a mutual option, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember when there was all the options that were going on. If I'm not mistaken, Montas was the guy where he declined his end of the option that the Brewers were going to decline anyway, if I'm not mistaken, which is sort of a funny little transaction that we had earlier this offseason. But regardless, he collected his buyout. He got his $16 million guarantee. I think it was a $2 million buyout. And now he hits the market again. So $17 million is only a $1 million raise on what he was guaranteed to pitch last season. And he did throw 150 innings. So there is something to the fact that he got this deal, and it's just how much of a premium you have to pay to get starting pitchers these days. Walker Buehler's feeling pretty good right now because he's looking at this and saying, yeah, why shouldn't I get at least $17 million after the postseason I just had? But that might just be the market. Now, the reason why you could be upset about this is because you are expecting the big names. You want to see Juan Soto sign with the Mets. You want to see them go after Corbin Burns or bring back Shawn Manaea or sign Max Fried. Those are the names you have circled. You want to see a Garrett Crochet trade. And how do we start off this offseason as Mets fans? The Mets trade for Jose Siri, who can field but can't hit. And now they sign a guy in Montas who just had a pretty bad season if you just look at the ERA. But the New York Mets have earned the benefit of the doubt because they did this last offseason. Well, we were all scratching our heads when they signed Shawn Manaea to a 2-year, $28 million deal that is very similar to this one. Yes, it was for less money guaranteed. Manaea got $14.5 million in 2024, had a player option for $13.5 million in 2025, which he obviously opted out of after he pitched to an ace level for the Mets. Now, Montas gets more money guaranteed, but the framework is very similar, and Manaea was not coming off a season where he was in a starting rotation for 150 innings. He was a swingman who had pitched to a 4.4 ERA with the Giants, and the year before that, his last full season as a starter, he pitched to a 4.96 ERA. So if you had looked at those 2 years, it would have been a big shock to find out that he would get a Cy Young vote and pitch to a 3.47 ERA in 181 and 2/3 innings pitched and look like an absolute ace who just ran out of gas in the NLCS, but he did have a great start against the Dodgers in Game 2 of the NLCS. So considering what they got out of Shawn Manaea, another former Athletic, by the way, just like Frankie Montas, you can understand what they like about this signing. You also had Luis Severino coming off a 6.65 ERA with the Yankees, and he had not pitched over 105 innings since 2018. No one would have thought the Mets would have got over 180 innings and a 3.91 ERA out of him. But they did, not to mention Jose Quintana and what he did at his age for the Mets this past season. So this is leaning into a new strength for the New York Mets, identifying guys who are maybe not at their peak value, who you think you can get back to that level. You look back at Frankie Montas' career, and he peaked in 2021 and really leading into 2022. 2021, he finished 6th in the Cy Young voting for the Athletics, pitched to a 3.37 ERA. He made 32 starts, so he took the ball every 5th day, 187 innings, 207 strikeouts. That's a strikeout per 9 rate in the double digits. Really impressive stuff. 2022, he pitched to a 3.18 ERA in Oakland in 19 starts, 104 and 2/3 innings pitched. Gets traded at the deadline to the New York Yankees. That was the deadline where Luis Castillo and Frankie Montas were the two big names on the market, and Montas goes to the Yankees for 4 prospects. Lou Trevino also went to the Yankees in that deal. Those prospects, according to MLB Pipeline at the time, are ranked at number 5, number 10, number 20, and number 21. So a pretty significant haul for Montas. Now, he ended up having a shoulder injury, so he pitched poorly for the Yankees in limited starts, gets shut down, gets the surgery, doesn't come back till the very end of 2023, and then this past year was his first year coming off that surgery. And again, not the best success when you look at his ERA, but his stuff ticked up when he got traded from the Reds to the Brewers. And the more I looked at the data behind this signing and looked at what Frankie Montas did this past year and what he did before that, the more I saw what the Mets are looking at, which is a guy that still has a very good fastball, still just 32 years old going into the next season. He's 31 now, but he'll be going to his age 32 season, who over the last couple years, despite the shoulder surgery, 2021, 2022, and this past season, he did show at least that he was a quality enough big league starting pitcher to take the ball every 5th day. There's a ceiling and there's a floor. You hope that last year is the floor, and if it is, and you get a 4.80 ERA and 150 innings, it's not the best, but it's also 150 innings. But the upside that we saw in 2021 and 2022, that's what the Mets are signing here. That's what they're hoping for. And I'll explain why they could get it in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And it's not just the NFL. You got the NBA going on right now. You got college football. There's so much you can play over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And again, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So make sure it's something that you feel really good about. And head over to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. All right, so what was different about Frankie Montas this past year than in 2021 and 2022? Well, I'll tell you what wasn't different. The velocity on his fastball. He averaged 96 miles per hour in 2021 and 2022. This past season, 95.6 miles per hour, and there was an uptick in velocity when he went from the Reds to the Brewers. Batters hit 206 against his fastball, 248 against his sinker. His cutter did get rocked a little bit. Batters hit 326 against it with a 609 slug, but his split was still nasty. He got whiffs 42.6% of the time. Batters hit 218 against his splitter. They only slugged 297. Slider had a good whiff rate as well at 32.5%. Batters hit 288 against it. Slugged pretty good against it as well, 577. Now, 2021, 2022, he was getting more induced vertical break on his fastball. Now, what does that mean? Induced vertical break is essentially ride on the fastball. That's that fastball that's up in the zone that hitters just can't quite get to. It's that perceived ride on the fastball. Now, in 2021, 2022, the induced vertical break on his fastball, his four seam, was around 17 inches. This past year, it was 15 inches. Now, he also had more induced vertical break, actually significantly more induced vertical break on his sinker or his two-seam fastball back in 2021. 5 inches of difference from what it was at in 2021 to this past season. So that is one thing you can look at, is getting induced vertical break on his fastball. And I was doing all my own, dive into this, and I actually found a really good thread on it as well from Isaac Gruffman that you can find over on Twitter or X. And he talked about that. He was actually able to really isolate the Brewers numbers from the Reds numbers. And he noticed that with the Brewers, they moved his arm angle up 7 degrees, and that got some more ride on the fastball. It wasn't significant. It was half of an inch, but I guess half an inch is pretty significant when we're talking about induced vertical break. Bottom line, the Brewers were able to get him to throw that fastball up in the zone with a little more success. They got more whiff on the fastball than he had previously with the Reds, and more velocity. He also adds some velocity to his slider, Isaac notes, adds some depth to it. What I also identified here, though, just baseline with what he did well last year and what he's been throughout his career. Okay, you look at who he is. He is more of a pronator than a supinator. Now, this is kind of getting really into the weeds, but I want you to follow me down this line a little bit. Pronators are guys like Christian Scott. Okay, these are guys who are fastball pitchers, is the easiest way to describe it. Let me see on the camera if I'm a righty. Left hand is probably better for the camera, so I'll try it lefty. Don't even know. I don't know who that autograph is on this ball I got, but bottom line, if you're watching on YouTube, pronators are guys who throw good fastballs. That is where the palm is facing forward. These guys have a lot of success by being able to throw fastballs, changeups, sinkers, cutters to a certain degree depending on the shape of their cutter. But it's guys who typically are good fastball pitchers. Those are guys who are really good at fastball and split. And that's what you're looking at with Frankie Montas. He's got a good fastball. He's got a nasty split finger. So, what do I think the Mets might have identified here that they like? If they can get more ride on his fastball, as well as his sinker, his two-seam, get a little more ride on it, that's going to help, and that's what we saw with the Brewers. They adjusted his arm angle. They got a little more ride. But I also wonder, he did have some more depth on his slider this past year. That's great. What I'm curious about is if he has thrown a gyro slider. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure if he's got a gyro slider or not. But if it was me and I was looking at this just based on the fact that he is a typical pronator, very similar to Christian Scott, what unlocked him? The gyro slider. So getting that gyro working where you aren't a supinator, it's about getting around the baseball, right? That's a slider, that's a curveball pitcher. That's a guy that, it really excels at getting that sweep, that horizontal movement. And he did get more of it on his slider this past year than he has previously, which is why I don't think it was a gyro slider. I think it was maybe him angling towards a sweeper. And if he can figure out a sweeper, that would be amazing, right? If he can get that horizontal movement, that sweep to it, and give you a completely different look than everything else he has working, that would be fantastic. But I am curious if we end up learning that they're going to lean into him with his pronation and get a gyro slider for Frankie Montas. This is just me spitballing. If they did that, I feel like you really are leaning into his strengths, but regardless of a gyro slider or not. What the Mets see with Frankie Montas is a guy that has really good characteristics on his pitches. He is a good ball of clay they can mold. He's got good stuff. He's shown an ability, now that he's got that shoulder surgery, to throw 150 innings again, and previously he got over 180. So that is a skill set that a MLB veteran has to develop to be able to get through the marathon. And the fact that he did it in 2021, was well on his way to doing it in 2022, and then just did it again after the shoulder surgery, I think the Mets are encouraged by the fact that they're going to get innings out of this guy. He has a ceiling that they like and a floor that, if nothing else, is just a guy that is going to be able to take the ball for them and give them innings. I think this was a really interesting signing. You look at the splits between the Reds and the Brewers. With the Reds, he only struck out in 93 and a third innings pitched, 78 batters. Once they got that more ride on his fastball, the velocity ticked up. He struck out 70 batters in 57 and a third. So that's a drastic spike in strikeouts in the same season. Remember, David Stearns was with the Brewers. The Brewers identified Montas as a guy they could fix. They traded for him. You're going to see some similar thought processes from the organization David Stearns built in Milwaukee to the one he's running now. So it's not surprising that that would be a similar target, and the Mets would be the team that doesn't trade for him midseason, but actually pays him in free agency. And they are going to try to get more out of this guy. And maybe it works out. Maybe next year you're looking at Frankie Montas and he's starting Game 2 of the NLCS, coming off an amazing season where he ends up being the Mets ace. You never know how this stuff's going to work out. But the Mets and David Stearns front office have earned the benefit of the doubt on this one. They've earned it. Now, are they going to hit on all these guys? No. This might be a guy they don't hit on. But was it a worthwhile gamble to take even at 2 years, $34 million? The more you look at his stuff, the more you look at his past, this is a gamble that's worth taking. It's not a guy who is pitching to a 4.84 ERA because his stuff completely evaporated coming off shoulder surgery. Now, this is a guy who had shoulder surgery. His stuff is getting close to being what it was pre-surgery, and he got stronger as the year went on. Part of that was getting to a better organization in Milwaukee. But still, that is something to build on. And just like last year, we said, what are they doing with Shawn, Manaea, and Luis Severino? That's how they're building the rotation? They didn't go out and sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto. They failed in that pursuit. They didn't even sniff around on Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. Why are they signing Manaea and Severino? And then they got 360 plus innings out of those guys. We'll see if this next signing that they just made ends up being as good as the last couple. It's a tough bar that those two set, but you never know. The question now is, what else is coming for the Mets starting rotation? How does this impact their other free agent pursuits? I'm going to go through that to close the show. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. And Game Time Picks is a feature that'll make it even easier to get those tickets for your favorite live events, because they're going to filter out the fluff and show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. And you can view your seat before you buy. You know exactly what to expect before you arrive, and it's the best place to go for last-minute tickets. I usually don't buy my tickets until I'm walking into the arena or the ballpark. Then I pull open the Game Time app, find the seats that I want, buy them in a matter of seconds. It's so quick and easy. When you download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. So when Frankie Montas got signed tonight, the first place I went was subtext and let the insiders know. You can also get in on our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you can ask me questions anytime. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, you can find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Will Frankie Montas be the best starting pitcher the Mets add this offseason? I highly doubt it. I still think they're going to sign an ace, whether that's Corbin Burns, Max Fried, whether they're trading for one in Garrett Crochet, or if they just bring Shawn Manaea back. I still think they're in the market to sign a frontline guy for sure. I also think that they're going to sign another potential reclamation project. Who it is, it's hard to predict. I should have identified Frankie Montas when I did my episode 5 under the radar starting pitchers in free agency. It was an oversight for sure. I went Matthew Boyd, Michael Lorenzen, Trevor Williams, Alex Cobb. And the fifth, I just said bringing back Jose Quintana. That fifth spot should have been Montas. Oversight by me for sure. Walker Buehler, at the time when I did that episode, I believed he was just going to go back to the Dodgers. Now that they signed Blake Snell, I think Walker Buehler is certainly out in the market, available to be signed away from the Dodgers. I do think he will leave LA, but are the Mets going to be the team that signs him? Who knows? We'll see what happens. I think it might even cost more than Montas, honestly. I really don't know. Considering what he did in the playoffs, I don't know how much teams are going to buy into that. Also, just the heights that Walker Buehler has hit in his career. He's one of the best postseason pitchers of the past decade. I mean, that's not even up for debate when you look at his stats. But remember, too, this was a guy that was contending for Cy Youngs before he went down with his second Tommy John surgery of his career. So I'd love them to sign Walker Buehler and bet on that ceiling as well as getting an ace. Roki Sasaki is still the wild card of this market. I think for him, considering the fact that he missed some time this past year with an injury, he's a guy that throws ridiculously hard. He's a young pitcher. If you signed him, it would be full control as if he's a minor league free agent. So I think Sasaki's just in another bucket. The Mets might sign 3 starting pitchers, and if they can win the sweepstakes for Sasaki, you win those sweepstakes and you figure it out. But right now, their starting rotation is Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Frankie Montas, Paul Blackburn, Tyler McGill, Jose Budo. That's pretty much what you're looking at, with Brandon Sproat hopefully waiting in the wings and other pitchers in the farm system like a Mike Vassell, like a Dom Hamill coming off down years, Blade Tidwell a down year as well. There's some depth, but I don't think that the Mets are going to go into next season counting on any of those guys, even Brandon Sproat. And I think they will fill out their rotation, where Jose Budo might be right back in the bullpen too. So I really think you could see the Mets sign 2 more starting pitchers. And we'll see exactly who those names are. I was going to do my show today prior to the Montas signing on how Scott Boras could package his free agents to the Mets here. Like, there's a lot of dialogue that's going on right now between Scott Boras and the Mets because they have a lot of similar interests. The Mets obviously, at least in some respects, have to be in on the market on Pete Alonso. We know they're in on Juan Soto. We would think they might be interested in bringing Shawn Manaea back, and Corbin Burnes is the best starting pitcher on the market. Frankie Montas was one of those lower level names on Scott Boras' client list, and he just ended up on the Mets. That's not to say that this is a precursor to the Juan Soto signing, although I did tweet that out just as a little bit of galaxy brain thinking. And is that real? Juan Soto's not going to make his decision based on Frankie Montas, no. But what is real about that is the fact that the Mets are working with Scott Boras on multiple different fronts right now. And signing more of his free agents, that is going to make the destination more attractive for a Burnes, for a Soto. Now, Montas is not going to swing the tides, but if you just understand Scott Boras' communication to his players here, there is something to be said about how the Mets are being presented to a Juan Soto, to a Corbin Burnes, to a Frankie Montas. Scott Boras had a conversation with Montas about where he's going to sign and looking to find a landing spot where Montas could get a 1+1 deal. So gets that second year option. And this one's a player option, not a mutual option like he signed last time. So that's even more of a security blanket. I'm sure there was other teams that might have been in at that dollar amount. And the Mets were the team that won the bidding, probably in part because of how well Shawn Manaea, his other client, did this past season. And hoping that the Mets would be the team that could rebuild Montas' value. And those conversations between player and agent are, hey, you're going to go to the Mets. You're going to pitch really well. It's going to be a really good team. And then you're going to hit the market again. And you are going to be in the running to get what I'm trying to get for Shawn right now, which is probably like 5 years and $100 million. And whether that actually comes to fruition or not, that's what they're going to be looking for. Because if Yusei Kikuchi can get $63 million, another Scott Boras client, older than Shawn Manaea, Why can't you tack on a couple more years for a guy that had a markedly better season overall? And that's how this game goes. Are those dollar amounts going to be met? Is Manaea going to get a 9-figure deal? I don't know. I don't think so. But you see how the market plays out. If you asked me yesterday if Frankie Montas would get $34 million, I would have said no. But starting pitchers get paid a lot of money. So we'll see. Again, doesn't mean that Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Corbin Burns, and Shawn are all going to sign with the Mets. But Scott Boras is going to send at least another free agent. That's not even a bold prediction. I think you're going to see at least one more Scott Boras client sign with the Mets. And you might see multiple, as the Mets are aggressive spenders in this free agent market and they look to build off of an NLCS appearance and try to get over the hump in 2025. We'll see what's next. Hopefully it's Juan Soto, but that's the wait and see game on tomorrow's show. Maybe we'll do a little more on Scott Boras, or maybe we'll turn our ties to another signing or another trade idea. Who knows what the offseason will bring, but I appreciate all of you who tune into this show every single day. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X or Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, you can find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Again, thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen or your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. It covers everything, the world of sports. I'm talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.